The state's per diem system to reimburse lawmakers for travel expenses is again under scrutiny after the FBI collected records from an assemblyman who has racked up a rather large bill. So far, William Scarborough is not facing any charges. He says he has followed all the rules for per diems and other official business, but one of his colleagues says that the rules are way too lax, and they really are. It's time for an update. Here to explain his proposal for changing the system, Assemblyman Kieran Michael Lawler. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
It really is easy to fall afoul of the rules, since the rules, such as they are really porous, yes?
Yeah, this is something I was aware of as a candidate and something that I, ran on as saying I live 96 miles away, I'm not going to take per diem, I'll go home every night. And the reason I did that was because I represent a district where a huge percentage of our people have to take a 90-minute train ride to Grand Central Station and then take a subway or walk. So they pay their own way. They don't sleep over in New York City. So I actually proposed that bill in January or February last year when I got here. And all it says is it shouldn't be the honor system. In fact, when I tell people the per diem system is the honor system, just say you were in Albany.
Yeah, no receipts required.
Correct. And even if you spend less than $171 a day, then it's just tax-free money to you. When I tell people that, they say, come on, Kieran, you're kidding me. You're pulling my leg. I said, no, that is the system. So the proposal that I put forth is, number one, let's collect receipts, and you get reimbursed on what you actually spend. Let's lower the amount also.
Lower the amount to what?
$125. I mean, $60 for meals. I mean, I don't miss too many meals, but I don't spend $60 on food a day. I don't know anyone who does. Maybe once a week.
If you're eating out at someplace fancy, you might.
What do you have to eat out at someplace fancy?
I'm just
on
saying,
the taxpayer dime?
it's not inconceivable that you could spend that amount of money if you were eating quite well.
And if it was coming out of your pocket, that's the key difference.
But what's also interesting, two things. First of all, I'm sure you saw the recent New York Times story that followed a number of lawmakers who stay at a reasonably priced budget hotel in the area, and it has like a breakfast bar, and they're saving. In other words, they get to pocket the money, right? So they're not even spending it; they're using it to pad their salaries, and the salary is $79,500 for an entry-level legislator in the Assembly. There's a lot of you because there's so many that you don't get a Lulu or a stipend. Would you agree that maybe you have to raise the salary and do away with per diems entirely?
When you have politicians disrespecting the taxpayer, I don't think the answer is to give them more tax dollars. I don't know how that really solves the problem.
We also saw a report this weekend, I believe, that you have a number of lawmakers, senators, and also one in the Assembly who's no longer there, who were putting in per diems even as they were fighting corruption charges, sometimes for days that the legislature wasn't in session.
Yeah, that's a big part of the problem. I'll give you a great example. I came up here last Saturday. I was given an award by the Young Republicans. Under the current rules, I could have had the taxpayers pay for me to come get an award from a partisan group, which had nothing to do with my legislative business, and that happens all the time. We're only in session 65 days a year, so when somebody has more than maybe 70 or 75 nights in Albany, that's something that I think we should take a hard look at.
Well, and right now, only the Assembly, just right this very minute as we are speaking, only the Assembly is scheduled to be in Albany this week. The Senate has decided not to be here. The budget was passed. They went home. They're taking a break. You're both taking a break for Easter and Passover, but they were supposed to be here for 1 week on their own and decided not to. So what you're doing in one house is just sort of, I shouldn't say insignificant, but you're incapable of doing any deals because the other house isn't even here, and all these people are eligible to collect per diems for that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And sometimes we'll have a 2 or 3 hour session. We'll pass 7 or 8 mundane bills, and then we'll do the same thing the next day, and that'll be the whole week, 2 or 3 days, 3 hours of session. And I'll think to myself, why not just get this all done in one day? The per diem is an incentive to sort of linger around Albany, and I don't think too much good comes from lingering around Albany.
Okay, but also it's probably not a popular idea to do away with them, and even the idea of making the receipts something that's required.
Right.
I don't hear a lot of people clamoring for that, of your colleagues,
well,
that is.
I mean, there's some people who have partaken in the system because that was a system, and now they're realizing there's abuses, and maybe they don't want to say, well, I've been doing this for several years, and it's hard for them to come out against it. One thing, when I first came to the Assembly, I had all these flyers in my mailbox, and it said, would you like to buy my condo as a retiring senator or member of the Assembly? People actually purchased real estate on the taxpayer dime using their per diem money. The individual lawmaker got the appreciation and value of the real estate, and then they were out of the Senate or the Assembly, and they wanted to sell it and turn a profit on it. That's patently wrong.
Isn't there a tax question too when this money is taxed? Isn't there an issue with the IRS?
My father's a CPA, but I'm not. But I have heard that raised, whether this should be tax-free.
So what's the reception then? I mean, does this bill have like a majority sponsor? Because unfortunately you are in the minority, which means it's difficult
I don't
to
have a
get bills
majority
passed.
sponsor yet. I also, in my original bill, said you should have to be outside of 125 miles to get per diem, to encourage us to get our work done and go home. We're drafting a new bill, which is just, let's end the honor system, let's collect receipts, and when we get that, we're going to shop that and try to get some majority support. But the time is now. We see the abuse. I mean, we had a conviction in February or March for one of the counts was defrauding the taxpayer
Boylan.
with this. Correct.
William
Correct.
Boylan Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were times that he was actually online playing games and also putting in time for being in session in Albany.
And you know, state workers, if you go on a trip for a state worker, they have a normal, not honor system. They have checks and balances. They require receipts. So why are the lawmakers different than the actual state employee when it comes to travel? It's wrong.
Unfortunately, I have to ask you some questions about you being in the news. That is not related to per diem. It is related to another hot topic, which is political fundraising.
Sure.
You've been raising money for a PAC, right? You formed to back Iraq and Afghanistan war vets running for Congress, but a large percentage of the money. This is the latest number, 1.8 million. Right, that you have raised, but only 91,000 going to candidates. You've shut this thing down, but that seems like a very lopsided margin.
Well, I'll tell you, we have given more money in a greater percentage than PACs run by Sarah Palin, Rick Santorum, and Marco Rubio. So in terms of the PACs that are sort of in our category, we're doing quite a good job. I started to shut it down last year because there's only so many hours in the day. This report is actually incorrect in that I just now started to wind it down. Also says in the headline there was misuse of funds, which is not even in the story. It's an erroneous, salacious New York Post headline.
Well, but you were paying some campaign contributors to do business for the PAC, right, to handle things like mailings.
Right, that's a huge operation. Most of the budget goes to mail, but so the percentage is, I guess you would say, relatively low. But to use a baseball analogy, since it's opening day, if you looked at a hitter and said that guy had no home runs last year, he's terrible, and you ignored the fact that he had 200 hits, regular base hits, not home runs, you'd be being very misleading. And what we did was we gave a lot of money compared to others in our category, but we also, in the mail, the candidates, where they're running, a little bit of biographical information was sent out to hundreds of thousands of people. So we put candidates on the map. We would get calls, say, you know, I don't want to give to your PAC, but I like this guy. I'm in Kansas. This candidate is in Kansas. I want to support him. Or I was in the Navy. I want to support the Navy guys. Can you put us in touch? Can you put us in the right direction? We got national television coverage for our candidates. If you're a Republican veteran running for Congress and you're sitting on, you know, the Fox News channels, Fox and Friends in the morning, what's the value of that? So that was all ignored in this article.
Understood. But
Also
just wait, hold on one
ignored
second.
was that I was a volunteer. This wasn't something I drew a salary. It was a labor of love because I was a congressional candidate, and I wish there was something like this in operation when I ran in 2008.
Okay, understood. But this is the second time there's been a report on this. Over a year ago, the Poughkeepsie Journal ran a similar story. At that point, it was 1.1 million. Now you're up to 1.8. And what was interesting to me is that in that story, you suggested that the story was biased, right? The Poughkeepsie Journal is, let's say, far less ideological and I would say less right-leaning than the New York Post, and yet you have these two publications, and both of them have the same story.
Well,
so
I think the running a story that's an year-old story in the Post is probably an indication I'm doing a good job rattling cages of the powerful people up here, which is what my constituents want me to do. I don't think it's a coincidence that 12 hours after we put out a press release saying Governor Cuomo shouldn't have a fundraiser with convicted felon like Spano, 12 hours later a reporter calls us and digs up an old story that's already been discredited.
So you think that the Cuomo administration planted this?
It wasn't my friends who did it. I think, you know, I've taken on the most powerful people in this state with a lot of effectiveness, and I think we're starting to break through. Yeah, somebody's trying to knock me down a peg, but we're not going to let it happen.
So that's interesting. You're talking about ex-Senator Nick Spano. He's a Republican, actually, and
he's a Republican for Cuomo. So
well, he did time for tax fraud, if I remember correctly, tax evasion, and then he co-hosted this fundraiser that the governor had in the Hudson Valley last week. So just, you have been rattling a lot of cages, you have been making a lot of noise, and I'm just curious, your name is sort of floated around as possible for statewide. Are you interested in running?
No, I like the Assembly. I just got here 14 months ago. I want to do good work in the Assembly, and I like going home every night. I have 4 little kids, 7, 6, 5, and 3, and I tuck them in and I put them on the bus in the morning.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Assemblyman.
All right, my pleasure.
I do appreciate it.